If you are a human being who is alive right now and watching this video, it is statistically very unlikely that you're getting the best sleep possible. And if you are smart, which you are because you're watching a video about how to get better sleep, you probably want to change that. So you could either consume all of this content, or you could watch this video and get the boiled down version and just the most practical takeaways. So let's just get started. What is QQRT? QQRT is the acronym that Matthew Walker uses for quality, quantity, regularity, and timing. And that's what he says is the real 80-20 of getting better sleep. So I'll break down each one. Quality is the proportion of each stage of sleep you get throughout the night. So as I said in the last video, there's 4 stages of sleep, REM sleep, and then stages 1, 2, and 3 of deep non-REM sleep. So quality is the proportion of each one of those you get and how effective it is at doing its specific task for sleep. Quantity is sleep duration times sleep efficiency. So if you're in bed for 8 hours, but you only sleep for 6 hours, you have a 75% sleep efficiency, which is not very good. A good sleep efficiency is about 90%. And there's regularity, which is simple. It's just going to bed and waking up at the same time every day. And then timing is aligning your bedtime with your chronotype, which is your genetic predisposition to be alert and sleepy at different times throughout the day. So there's a bunch of different things you can do to modulate each one, and I'm going to go over pretty much all of them in about 10 minutes. So I'm going to go over what a perfect 24 hours for sleep behavior looks like. And of course, a perfect 24 hours begins with a good night of sleep, which starts at bedtime. So to pick your bedtime, you first have to know your chronotype. And to figure that out, I'll leave a link in the description to a chronotype test. That's basically the time of day where your body naturally wants to go to sleep. Once you've found out what your chronotype is, you want to go back about an hour or two and start thinking about dimming all the lights in the house before bedtime. The reason you want to do this is because light is very disruptive to the release of melatonin in your brain. So dimming the lights in your house allows your brain to naturally release melatonin, which is important for being able to fall asleep naturally. If you need to get around during these dark hours, like I call them, you ideally want to use the dimmest light possible or red light, because red light is the least disruptive wavelength to melatonin. In these 2 hours, if you really want to get an A+ for sleep behavior, you could stretch a little bit. That's what I do. You could listen to an audiobook, or ideally you can get some passive heat exposure, which is to be different than active heat exposure, which would be like going for a run. Passive heat exposure is something like getting in a sauna, taking a warm shower, taking a warm bath. The reason you want to do this is because exposing your body to heat will cause a reciprocal drop in body temperature, which you need to fall and stay asleep. Your body actually cools down 1 to 3 degrees when you're going to bed, and counterintuitively, a little bit of heat exposure like a bath or a sauna causes your body to reciprocally drop its body temperature, which is what you want to happen. So once you actually get into bed, then you want to focus on having the ideal sleep environment. The basics of the perfect sleep environment is you want it to be dark, cool, and comfortable. Dark, like I said, is important because light suppresses melatonin, which is the chemical you need to naturally fall asleep. Cool is important because there's a growing body of evidence that having too hot of a bedroom can disrupt your sleep. The ideal temperature is between 68 and 75 degrees Fahrenheit because, like I said, your body needs to drop in temperature 1 to 3 degrees to fall and stay asleep. So the idea behind this is if it's cool in the ambient temperature of the room and you layer on blankets as needed, you can kind of put out your hands or take in your hands to control your exposure to different temperatures and regulate your body temperature accordingly. Humidity is also another factor that correlates to sleep. The ideal humidity is between 40 and 60%. Falling too far below or above that has been shown to disrupt sleep. And air quality is also important. Having high levels of PM 2.5, which is just particulate matter that's 2.5 microns across, can also disrupt sleep. So I wouldn't say air quality and humidity are as important as temperature, but if you just want something you can set up in your room and not have to think about it, an air filter and a humidifier or dehumidifier, depending on where you live. But in summary, you want a dark, cool, comfortable sleep environment between 68 and 75 degrees Fahrenheit, 40 to 60% humidity, and preferably as clean air as you possibly can. Another important thing for while you're asleep is how you breathe. There's also growing research showing that mouth breathing while you sleep is disruptive to your sleep. Long story short, you are less efficient at regulating your blood gases if you mouth breathe, not only because you are more likely to have your airway collapse if you're mouth breathing while you sleep. It's called sleep apnea. It's particularly bad in older, overweight men, but it can happen to anybody. And for everybody, the ideal way to breathe while you sleep is nose breathing. Some people like doing mouth tape. I find it hard if I mouth tape because if my nose is clogged, I just can't breathe either way very well. So I like to use nasal strips to open my nose up or nasal spray, or you can use both. But whatever you have to do to mouth breathe, I'll also sometimes put on a chin strap if it's really bad. Maybe you'll get to see a picture of me wearing that right now. But yeah, nose breathing is the ideal way to breathe while you're asleep. They did a study with 844 participants ranging from 18 to 94 years old and found that yes, sleeping with your phone in the room, particularly sending and receiving texts while in bed, is highly correlative to bad sleep. One of the easiest things you can do if you only take away one thing from this video is just put your phone in another room while you sleep, because it is one of the easiest things you can do to improve your sleep environment. Another thing for the sleep environment is association. It's really important that you have your bed associated with sleep. It's very common for people to watch TV or read books or just lay awake and be anxious in bed. And your brain is, highly adaptable to different behaviors based on the environment. And if you have your bed as a place that I get in and I lay down and I ruminate, then it's going to be much more difficult to fall asleep than if you just do nothing in your bedroom except sleep. So, one tip that Matthew Walker gives is one room, one use. And this is common amongst all the best sleepers I know. Another story about this is my sister, who has a lot of trouble sleeping. She lays awake in bed at night, went to Europe recently and found that when she changed her environment and she wasn't in the same place she was associating with staying awake and thinking, she found it much easier to fall asleep. The key here is, if you can, only sleep in your bedroom. And if you're finding yourself ruminating for a really long time at night, get up out of bed, go to another room, lay down in a cool, dark couch somewhere, do something you can do quietly and in the dark, but don't lay awake in bed if possible. Last thing for environment is removing all the clock faces from your room, especially if you have sleep anxiety. Knowing what time it is when you wake up in the middle of the night and can't get back to bed serves no useful purpose other than making you anxious. And it's just one of the easiest things you can do is just take away all the clocks in your room. And personally, for me, this has been one of the biggest moves I've made for getting better sleep, is taking all the clocks and my phone out of my room. Now that you have gotten your perfect night of sleep, what do you want to do in the morning to ensure you get a good night of sleep the next night? Like I said in the last video, if you want to get more REM sleep, you're going to get more of that at the end of the night. So if you want to get more REM sleep, you can sleep in. But after you have actually woken up and gotten out of bed, you want to make sure you get a cortisol spike early in the day. Now, it may sound counterintuitive because cortisol is like the stress hormone and everyone's trying to lower their stress, but it's actually natural and healthy to have a cortisol spike early in the day. To ensure you're getting the cortisol spike early in the day, you want to get outside and get 5 to 10 minutes of direct sunlight straight into your eyeballs. And there's a lot of neuroscience that I will not bore you with. Long story short, you can get like sunlight simulators, but the sun is a very, very bright and specific wavelength, and that's what your eyeballs are looking for to signal to your suprachiasmatic nucleus that it's daytime. So if you want that cortisol spike early in the day, get 5 to 10 minutes of direct sunlight into your eyeballs. Now, don't stare at the sun if it hurts, but try to get outside and get some sunlight in your eyes. Another thing you can do to ensure you're getting all these wake-up chemicals early in the day, peaking your adrenaline in some other way, like a cold plunge. This is going to raise your adrenaline levels. If you don't believe me, you should go jump in some cold water and see if you don't feel a little it's also going to have the secondary effect of increasing your body temperature, similar to how the sauna will actually cool your body down. If you get into cold water, you'll have a reciprocal increase in body temperature, which promotes wakefulness and alertness. Exercise is another huge thing you can do to make sure you're regulating your circadian rhythm. It's a triple whammy because, for one, it's a thermal cue. As your body heats up, you're waking up more. It's a neuromodulator surge. You're getting all sorts of dopamine and adrenaline, cortisol, and all that stuff while you work out. So it's another good wake you up activity. And it builds more of that sleep pressure, which is the adenosine you need later in the night to fall asleep. So it's kind of a triple whammy. The only thing is you don't want to overdo it. If you exercise way too much all the time, it can start to disrupt your sleep and your recovery. So exercise a lot, but not too much. Another one is food, which is very complex. I'm not going to touch on it too much. I will just say the basic overview is having regular food timing is another anchor for your body to know what time of day it is and kind of get into a rhythm. So having regular food timing, try not to eat at the middle of the night if you wake up, and don't eat too much too close to bedtime. It's actually not the worst thing to eat, an hour before bed. But if you do have a lot of food close to bedtime, it can be disruptive to your sleep. Caffeine is the last thing I'll say. It's an adenosine antagonist. So the chemical in your brain that makes you feel sleepy, which is adenosine, caffeine binds to those receptors and doesn't allow adenosine to bind to them. So you won't feel the sleepiness that you've built up in your brain if you have caffeine. This is good if you want to be alert, but bad if it's time to go to bed, which is why the recommendation is to cut off caffeine as early in the day as possible, because caffeine has a half-life of 5 to 6 hours, depending on how quickly you metabolize it, which means 10 to 12 hours after you have your first cup of coffee, 25% of that caffeine is still floating around in your body. So I cut off my caffeine 12 hours before I go to bed, which is about 10 o'clock in the morning. But you also don't want to have caffeine too early in the morning because it disrupts your body's ability to clear out the adenosine from the night before. So if you have caffeine in the first 90 to 120 minutes, you are blocking the adenosine receptors in your brain, and the adenosine that would have otherwise cleared out is still going to be present, so that when that caffeine wears off, you have the oh so common afternoon crash. So to avoid that, you want to wait 90 to 120 minutes to have your first cup of coffee or caffeine or whatever you're having, and then cut off caffeine consumption about 12 hours before bedtime. This is another one of the biggest things you can do if you want to have more energy throughout the day and get better sleep, is just get your caffeine timing down. It helps so much. And if you're reaching for 5 cups of coffee throughout the day, it's probably not more caffeine that you need. It's probably less caffeine and more sleep. So that's all I'll say on caffeine. And then as the evening rolls around, there's a couple do's and a couple don'ts. One of the first don'ts is alcohol. It is just in every way disruptive to your sleep. When I've said this to people, they're like, oh, I can have alcohol and I'll fall asleep fine. Or I fall asleep great when I have a bunch of alcohol because I'm super tired. But the misconception there is that when you are asleep with a bunch of alcohol in your system, you're actually sedated. Your brain's not doing all the beautiful things it does while you're asleep. Like the glymphatic system is not active and you're not getting all these sleep spindles and the memory consolidation. You're just sedated. A do is in the evening, if you get the quality and quantity of light present at sunset, it'll tell your body that nighttime's rolling around, and it will actually buffer your disturbances with bright light in the evening. So evening sunlight is a do. Anxiety is one of the biggest culprits aside from alcohol and caffeine and all that stuff. If you have anxiety, this is one of the things that has disrupted my sleep the most. I recommend you take advantage of the Zeigarnik effect, which says that unfinished tasks tend to take up more of your mental space than finished tasks, which is not to say that, don't go to bed until you finished all your work for the day, but it is to say that if you just write down all the things you're worrying about, it can take it off your mind. And this, for me, has been one of the biggest helps on those nights where I am laying awake in bed just thinking. If I go out and here and I just write down all the stuff I'm worrying about and I close my book and I go to bed, you'd be surprised how helpful that can be. Another do is supplements. There's a boatload of supplements you can take that are supposed to help for your sleep. Many of them are unregulated, and many of them are just straight up not effective. There are a few good ones and a few particularly bad ones. One of the bad ones is melatonin. Not going to touch on it too much. There's a lot of data showing that what you see on the bottle of melatonin does not correlate to what's actually in the bottle. Sometimes it's way more and sometimes it's way less. Plus, melatonin as a supplement is not the best idea for sleep because it's an exogenous hormone. And when you take it, your pineal gland, which typically releases melatonin, is going to stop doing it if you're taking it exogenously. So I would highly suggest you avoid melatonin, and instead I would recommend something like magnesium threonate or bisglycinate, pretty much the same thing. It increases magnesium levels in the brain, which supports relaxation. Apigenin, it's a derivative of chamomile. A lot of people say it helps. It makes me sleepy, but I also get vivid dreams from it, so I don't take Apigenin. L-theanine, another one really good at calming you down. I notice it reduces the noise in my head a lot, but also gives me very vivid dreams. Myo-inositol, I take that every night, and it makes me fall asleep like nobody's business. So myo-inositol is another good one to check out. Last thing I will say, if you get a bad night of sleep, what should you do? And the answer is nothing. Because a lot of people will try to make up for a bad night of sleep by having a bunch of caffeine or going to bed super early the next night. And all of that just stands to disrupt your next night of sleep. So if you get a bad night of sleep, don't worry about it. It's perfectly normal. Just try to stay on track and do all that you're supposed to do to get a good night of sleep the next night. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Hope you get some sort of practical takeaway from this, and it helps your sleep a little bit. And if you've made it this far and you love me, please leave at least one comment below about how I can improve these videos, because I really want to keep making them and I want to know how I can do better. So your feedback is a gift and I greatly appreciate it. And I'll see you guys soon. All right. Bye.